Hey, so I want to show you guys the worm bin I was talking about last night. This is a new worm bin, new kind of style. I've never seen anything quite like it. Let's go to my worm room. I'm in my office right now. And just to show you guys, you don't need much room for this, if this interests you. So here I am in the basement unfinished area. And you can see right there the worm farm. God's Earth. Sorry. Genesis 2:15. There's a couple worms here. I gotta get pretty crazy. Anyway, this is it. Right here. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure this thing out here. So you see, there's a one. There's a spot for the second one. It's just made out of 2x2s. I painted it. Third one and fourth one. And then there's this top place for the top here as well. Now, you'll notice there's these little things here. These are just closet hanger things. I made holes, and this is just specifically to hold the thing inside, which you're going to see. As well, you'll see this little drainage. Sorry, this little drainage thing here. This little pipe that ends right here, and then it goes and gets drained all the way down in here into some tub that I don't have yet. Okay, let me just explain the premise of this. So this leans, I don't know if I can zoom out. I guess I can't, have to hold this back. So this is tilted this way, slightly. These boards are tilted slightly. And as well, right here, they're tilted towards the front. So that any runoff of any moisture comes down and comes down this way and escapes this way. Now let me put this right here, see if we can, if you guys can, just while I explain a couple things here. So you can see there's a very small area. I've literally got, let me pull out the tape so you guys can see. This is in an area about 5 feet. And it's about a little over 5 feet. That's my worm room area. Now I want you guys to see this right here. This whole area up here, I can put this kind of tray system right here. This tray, which is a good alternative to doing the worm bins. I like this tray. And I can literally line it up a bunch here or here still. So I figure I can hold easy 2,000 worms in this particular one bin right here. Because per square foot, you're able to hold 1,000. So this is 1 foot, and the length of it is 31.5 inches. I want you guys to see this part. So this is just a screen here, you see? I just nailed some wood, some screening here. The reason for the screening is not for the worms to not get out. It's to get air flow and to keep potentially flies out. Again, this is an experimental thing. There are no worms in here yet. This is what you call a true horizontal migration worm bin, like the pros do it. I've seen horizontal migration done on YouTube, and that's not how you do it. They basically fill up the worm bin, and then they just try to start migrating them to one side. You want it to start from the beginning to the end. And another thing I noticed here, let me just quickly shoot this right here. Another thing I noticed in a lot of these worm guys, which this is completely new. This is a project. I highly recommend you subscribe so you guys can see the progress of this. But I've taken a look at what they're doing. Most of these worm farmers, hobbyists, it's as if they have worms for pets. And they feed them, for example, peat moss and certain things to keep the castings as dry as possible. That's not the reason to really have a worm farm. The reason to have a worm farm is to deplete your organic waste, stuff that you're eating. And that's essentially what I'm going to do via FLOhKASHI, which is, you'll notice, I gotta get used to this. Those buckets there, that's FLOhKASHI. So I'm doing this as a full cycle system to eradicate the waste in our house. Now they say all kinds of different things, but I'm gonna pretty much, I believe that this is the truth. It is more truthful than anything. A worm eats half its body weight, probably less per day. Not the full body amount, probably not even half. So if you got a pound of worms, which is 1,000 worms, you're going to move half a pound a day. So I believe it's going to be less. Now these are pretty heavy. They got a handle here. You see they're just made out of plywood. Okay, and they have these slots whereby you can lift this. Now they have these little pins here, and the pin is so that I can lift it a little bit. You see that gap underneath? So here's the premise on how this works. I'm just going to hold this up like this so you can see. So in this section here, I'm going to put bedding, which is newspapers, anything shredded like that, and whatever. I'll get into that afterwards. And in this area, I'm going to put food. So this is open, and it's closed from below. They can't pass through. I want them to eat up this here before I even decide to crank this over and go over here. But truthfully, what I'm going to do, hold on a second. This is coated in vegetable oil, guys, by the way. So what ends up happening is then I move this one right here. I move this one wherever I want it. So let's say I want it over here. And this, I added many spaces because I'm not sure yet. I fill this area with food. Okay. And then I lift this area and pin it. Then the worms can start traveling to this food area and truly migrating. Okay? Now, you can't migrate when your bin is full and then you want these worms that are over here all the way over here. You got to work them across as well. When they've migrating over here, this stuff here starts getting dry, which is the problem with the worm bins that I've noticed. They never get dry, and the castings take forever and they can't sift them. The reason being, because let me just put this down for 2 seconds. The reason being is the worm bins are stacked on top of each other, so when you put the food on the top, all moisture keeps running down, keeps covering that material, those castings, with water, and they're always going to be soaked. So this migration system works alongside so that you can go ahead and put a covering to keep this area, for example, moist, where the food's at, and this area dry, so that they naturally go forwards. Okay? When they've depleted essentially this food, then we open this up, they start migrating, and we start moving the moisture level to here. So we cover this with a little bit of plastic and leave this empty. And especially with this screening, the airflow is just going to flow in there nicely and start drying this. Again, any moisture is going to slide down and go all the way through that tube that we got, which is a quick engage tubing system that you just pull back here and you pull. Okay? So I wanted to address a couple things, and the two things was I wanted to deplete the waste that I have in my house, food waste. I don't want to go out and buy pet food. I want to deplete the waste that I have in my house. That's why I have composting worms. Number two, I want to gather up God's earth, which is, this is the epitome, castings of God's earth. So that I can have the most nutrient-rich, diverse range of nutrients, all encapsulated with the FLOhKASHI system, and that's very powerful stuff as far as soil goes. It's not peat moss. It is like diverse, all kinds of waste. And thirdly, I wanted to make sure that it was dry so I could scoop it and then just filter it with this little sifter. Just filter it instead of watching worms and moving worms around. That's not what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to grab that castings, right? let's say I want to harvest this here. The worms are already moving over here to this next side. Sorry. I want to harvest this here. I start pulling this out and I'll sift it. And then what happens is it is small enough to capture the worm eggs, the worm eggs, and what travels in from under here is the finished castings. And then what I'll do is this product will have big worms, but I'll first sift them with this, so I can get the bigger worms out, mature worms, and start putting them to work again in another part of one of those other bins, for example. Then I'll sift this out, and that will be finer, smaller worms, and little castings. Little cocoons. And those little cocoons, then I will let them breed out so that they're little worms, and so on. And then once they're big enough that they are captured in that sifter, then the rest is all castings. Okay? So the process basically moves the worms across here, and once they get to a certain level here, I can go the other way. So the worms will be going like this, and then they'll be going backwards like this. So it's opposite effect. Afterwards, the majority of the worms will be here, and then I'll put the food over here beside it. Put this in place. See, I can't. I gotta pull these out to demonstrate. They're just what do you call it? They're just clips from the closets. Okay, so I put this in here, in place, all the way down, and then I lift these ones so that they're up. Put the clip in place, and that's it. There's now a gap, so the worms can go and travel underneath and get to this board, which they stop, but I'm going to go from one side to the next. So let me just show you guys. This is all made out of plywood, and what I did was dadoed. I just made some dados in the wood so that this functions. And you can see there's a slight gap here underneath. Okay, so the worms can pass under. Once I see that they migrated all the way, then I can just simply take this one out, and then they'll completely be traveling into this area. This is definitely a new kind of worm bin. I've not seen anything quite like it. This is just a prototype essentially. Well, you can make this yourself. You could do this. It's not that complex. Put a couple pieces, foot inside. So this is going to hold at least 2,000 worms at least. So 2, 4, 6, 8,000, probably even more, 10,000. If you have 8,000 worms, will produce 4 pounds of waste per day, and I'll tell you guys the truth once it starts happening. So 4 pounds of waste per day, 4 times 7 is 28. 28 pounds is what approximately that I put in these FLOhKASHIs, even less per week. Okay, and this here, many say it's too acidic and all this stuff. I'm going to test it. I'm going to see. And what I want to do is actually take this, which is full of microbes, because worms don't eat organic matter. They eat the microbes. That's what they really want, microbes. So you fill your stuff with microbes. Like you throw a banana in here, they're not going to be interested until it starts to decompose. What's that mean? It starts to have microbes. So this is full of microbes. And what's going to end up happening is, once I take this FLOhKASHI, I'm going to mix it with some IMO, which is indigenous microorganisms, and all that the worms will consume, and the castings will be high level of diversity, and worth a lot of money in essence. I'm not doing this for the money, but the castings do sell for $1 a pound minimum. So anyway, that's my worm room. It's not that difficult. It's not that serious. You don't have to do it this way. Like I said, you can do this bin system, right? And just have it supported on little wood slots. But I wanted to do something that actually is going to produce dry castings and move worms from one side to the other and then come back again. This is going to happen. What's going to happen in 3 months? Let's say I have 5,000 worms. In 3 months, that should multiply to 10,000 worms. Okay, so I'm setting it up so that people that are out there that want to save the world of this carbon and greenhouse gas stuff that's going on. I showed a live stream, explained it briefly, how we could do this. Just the bokashi alone, just this here, you're going to be doing essentially the job of 150 to 200 trees. Without planting one tree, you're doing the job of 150 to 200 trees. You go one notch ahead of it and do this, and then you're going to have this supreme product whereby just 10 to 20% in your garden area and in your planters, etc., you're going to produce food to the highest level because it's full of life. The soil without life is dead. So you need to add life into the soil. Subscribe, guys. So that's my worm bin. There's 0 worms in here. I'm going to be getting some worms soon. I just want to make sure we're good. I'm going to put, what I'm going to do here is put another coat of vegetable oil on this wood. You can see there's without, and you can see with, right? And so this is going to protect the wood for some time. And then if this project goes well, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to design these things, or get someone to design them and make them out of plastic, because I think this is the best kind of setup, to be honest. You don't get worms for pets. You get worms to harness their power and to get rid of the organic waste that you're throwing out. That's why they're called composting worms. Red wigglers is what we're going to use here. So subscribe, guys, subscribe. I want to do things differently. You can see my IMO box that I showed yesterday. It's here to collect indigenous microorganisms, which is another huge untapped area whereby we got to tap it. We're going to show people how to do this. And if you can't do it, or you don't have the time to do it, you can get it from your local persons that has learned how to do it, so that you can grow the soil. We don't need these chemical companies selling us stuff, okay? So till the next one, take care. God bless.